Welcome back, Warriors. This is Mars. Welcome back to another Conan Exiles PvP training room. I haven't done one of these in a while, so hopefully
Not an anime.
you won't hold it against me. So I wanted to talk a little bit in detail about my flaws in terms of PvP because I really haven't made a serious commitment to playing too much PvP lately. But I have been playing a little bit of PvP, so I
Settings and
wanted to talk
gameplay.
about some of the things that I
There
feel
should
like
be
I'm
enable
lacking
auto
and
facing,
possibly some
enable
other people are lacking. So
enable
talking in
box,
detail will probably help me
enable
get
auto
everything in
facing on
order
attack.
so I can keep improving in the
Should be
game
at the
as
last
well
one
as
on the
anyone else.
last one on the
Now,
whole
for this
box
video,
checklist.
I'm going to be talking also about weapons, pros and cons, what's
Okay, maybe
performing
just
well,
enable.
what needs to be buffed, what changes I feel that should be implemented, and
The hell?
what I think is kind of
Whoa. Oh, never
overperforming
mind.
in terms of
My
overall
spear
performance because
disappeared. Then it
there's
reappeared.
quite a
Okay.
few there's quite a few things that are kind of overperforming this patch, but let's jump right into it. So from my perspective, since I'm just getting back into PvP, I feel like I'm not playing to the best of my abilities. But
So then
luckily,
that
I
last
have
one
two
will get you.
people in my corner that can pretty much help me in terms of just getting back in shape. So first things first, I feel like my ability to pressure needs to be improved because there's a lot of times where I really have people on the ropes, but I kind of back off. It's either to the fact that I'm not at full health and I feel like I can't commit,
Come here,
or
boy.
it's just the fact that I'm not present in mind thinking that I can actually finish them off. Usually I try to finish fights pretty. Usually I try not to push the pace of the fight too fast until I actually feel prepared.
What
But
do you need?
lately I haven't felt like I added any tactic to my playstyle, which I'm going to get into that
Yeah.
later. So what I feel like you need to do
It's
when you're
because
pressuring, you really have
yeah.
to have a descriptive strategy. Like it doesn't have to be anything too extravagant. If you like
Okay,
throwing
gotcha.
axes, finish throwing axes. If you feel like you want to trade, use a warhammer, or a greatsword, or any type of weapon, or really an axe. An axe is really good at trading, especially for when you're
Yeah.
just trying to finish people off.
You don't see that too much with the
That's
Demetrius or
kind
the
of the aspect.
Nordling. It's
Another
because
thing for
like
me, I feel like I have to have much better accuracy because my spear pokes,
like
my
the
warhammer
blade
swings,
shape.
and even my throwing axes are really lackluster these days. Even at close range, there are just times where I absolutely miss, and I feel like that is keeping me from securing kills. So what I really feel like I need to do is go back to the drawing board and just work on like long distance throwing and close distance throwing, not just on players, but on stationary objects. A good thing to practice on that
Sword
would
is
be
really nice. I do like the white blade
the
for that
building
extra
material,
5 in
the
width.
little pillars. You can practice on pillars to work on just your overall accuracy and working on animation canceling. Also, animation canceling. I've noticed my animation canceling is a little bit off, and sometimes it's either that the game bugs out or I lag and then I miss, or sometimes I just miss the proper cancel entirely. With animation canceling, you really have to get good at it this patch, just because the rolling is nowhere near the speed of what it used to be. Not that the roll is a bad idea or it's bad in general, especially in heavy armor. The heavy armor roll is actually a great addition, and I feel like it should remain, especially if they plan on making any more alterations to the movement again. Excuse me. So animation canceling, I really need to make a commitment in improving that. That's how I see that. The next thing I want to talk about is improving my tactics, because my
Bush.
tactics have been very lackluster in terms of just overall gameplay. I'm kind of just throwing out
Oh
attacks.
shit.
I'm not really thinking about adding any combos or
Oh, it
any
got me. GG.
descriptive play
Yeah.
style. My play style has been extremely lackluster just because I haven't been playing. That's
What's
what
the
I feel.
hammer
And a
attack?
part of it is I
What's the
haven't been
base
developing
damage?
as a player either. So what you want to do is you always want to be looking at different play styles. You always want to be trying different things, especially since there's so many good players out there. That's one of the major things. Now the next thing I feel like I need to work on is my defense and my movement. Now, a simple way to improve your defense this patch is probably adding a shield to your playstyle, just because shields can't be knocked back
Block, dude.
from warhammers anymore, or maces. I don't think
Shield.
maces could ever really knock a shield back, but I know for certain warhammers cannot knock any shields back. So adding a shield will definitely improve your defense. But outside of that, some of the best form of defense is movement. So basically separating from your opponent. How you do that is you zigzag, you run in long circles, you put enough space between you and your opponent if you can. If your opponent's usually using bows or throwing axes, if you're already too close and you can't separate from them, you really have to find a way to separate, or try and trade with them, or put them in a position where like you can get away from them. And my overall movement, like I said, it needs work. So just overall movement.
Got him.
Oh, that hit me. I dodged the wrong side.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is healing and resource management. So I haven't had too many issues with resource management. I haven't had any problems. I haven't had any problems outstimming just because I usually run about tier 2 grit. I've been hearing this patch you can run tier 1 grit, which is fine, but since I'm wearing heavy armor and there's times where I'm definitely going to want to maintain my resources since I like to do a lot of heavy attacks, I definitely like the comfort of having tier 2 grit. And also that's also in the realm of max of your healing ability. You kind of want to manage your heals and your set pots and your numbing wraps appropriately because you don't want to use all of them in a fight where you feel like you can finish off an opponent quickly. Now there are going to be fights where you can't finish off opponents quickly and they're going to go the distance. Now you don't overly consume your consumables. You manage them to a way where like you can sustain your own life, and at the same time you're not just completely running through them.
Something weird's going on with this healing prevention.
Next I want to talk about weapons. So most weapons this patch, ever since since penetration on tier 4 accuracy got fixed, almost every weapon pretty much hits like a truck. You don't need too much strength these days. I've had a lot of success with just having tier 2 strength and most of this patch. It's been pretty solid. You don't really need too much strength to actually do too much, but the additive of strength with penetration definitely increases your output of damage. Now, the weapons that I feel that are performing pretty well, probably better than the last patch, is probably spears. Even though spears don't have an enormous amount of hyper armor, they're still in a pretty good place to even stop a greatsword if used properly.
Oh, I tried to block.
Now, Warhammers, I think Warhammers took a bit of a nerf, especially since shields can no longer be knocked back by Warhammers, which is kind of unfortunate. I really don't feel like Warhammers should have been hurt in that way, because that's pretty much been the only counter to shields and swords and axes. So I feel like they should revert that back or make some changes to shields to where like you can knock them back, because the fact that you can't like really knock a shield back except by kicking makes it very difficult to actually counter shields. So one-handed swords, I feel like they've been pretty good for quite a while. It's just been the fact that axes have been much more popular, but since the game has been changing over and over, it makes swords much more appealing. Daggers are still in an okay place. They're okay. They're not. They're probably back on the bottom of the tier list, honestly, unless you're using the best type of daggers, which I'm not really sure. It could be the Whirlwind Blades, could be the Nameless Days, I don't know. Now, axes are still probably top tier in terms of overall damage, especially Yog's Touch. That axe, this patch, if you run tier 3 strength with a Yog's Touch with tier 4 accuracy, you're probably 3-shotting people. I know for a fact if it's a tier 4 strength, you're definitely 2 or 3-shotting people with that. Katanas are honestly something that I've been enjoying this patch. They're kind of cool. They're a lot better than last patch or the previous patches, just because like it doesn't require too much finesse to actually use. You don't have to use too much brain power, especially since if you have good mechanics with the game. Now, the weapons that I feel that are definitely overperforming, I would say shields, just because they can't be mitigated. They can only be mitigated by like kick, but that's neither here nor there. It's really the weapon type. I feel javelins are extremely overpowered this patch. If you've actually used any this patch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm hoping they get adjusted. They have an extreme amount of hyper armor. They can pretty much take on any type of weapon in game, which is kind of interesting, but at the same time, they really take no effort to use. They have really good damage if you build into accuracy. And with a shield, they're almost impossible to counter with someone who's skilled. Man, Prod here, he is really skilled with javelins. And I will add more gameplay on javelins soon, but I really just want the devs to really work on javelins a bit more. I don't want them to take away the damage. The damage is interesting. I like it. It adds more flexibility to the game. But at the same time, I don't think they should have that much hyper armor. They have far too much hyper armor, and especially pairing them in tandem with throwing axes, there's almost no counter because it's an infinite stagger. Now, take that information how you will. Please don't abuse that. I just put it out there just because, I mean, it needs to be out there. People want it. People are probably going to want to know about it. Now, now to a weapon that's probably not overperforming, just doing very well. The short sword is actually pretty interesting. It closes the gap pretty quickly. If you build, if you have the correct build, you can deal a pretty amount of damage very quickly. And you can really catch people. You can really catch people because it's so fast. It doesn't have good horizontal damage unless you're using the light attacks up close and you're just constantly pestering somebody. But other than that, it does really well in close combat. I can't complain about that at all. The greatsword, I feel like almost every greatsword functions like pre-patch annihilator. I really do feel that way. It's really good. You should definitely look into getting a greatsword because they'll cut people in half. And I kind of want to talk about bows, but not really. I feel like bows are still in the position as what they were when the 100% armor pin arrows were out. But I mean, you actually have to work towards that, so I don't feel like bows are overperforming in terms of damage because they should be damaging and they should be efficient. But I feel like bows are overperforming. Well, no, I know that bows are overperforming because the way that people use them, they'll get up close and then they'll just lock on and just spam them. So really, in terms of just overall damage when spamming arrows, they do a ridiculous amount of damage and they're very easy to use up close. So that's that way. I feel as if bows should have the lock-on function removed. They should definitely have the lock-on function removed because really there's up close there's no counter, and at the same time there's like anyone could really do that. Anyone could really lock on and really do that. I don't hate bows. I've used bows since I started playing this game pretty much consistently. I just want them to be balanced. So pretty much that's all I kind of wanted to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will be uploading some builds in the future and some future buildings or base builds. So I hope that you enjoyed the content and keep slaying, guys. Good luck.
Oof, that would have hurt. That'd have been it.
That would have killed
That
you.
would have been it. That would have definitely been it.
Hurt. It would have killed you.
Back up. Back up. Back up, dude.
Jesus, that is
You're leaking, bro. You're leaking. What's going on?
Man, this headache is... What?
Got him. Got him.
Why didn't that hit you?